Well, Marcus, thanks for joining me on the Before I Go podcast. And for those that don't know Marcus, you're about to get to know him a heap better. But I will say only a few words, which is the man in front of you and that you're listening to is one of the most beautiful humans that I have ever shared space with a heart of gold. And this is the first. So thank you very much for joining us and giving what gold you do have inside you, mate. So welcome. And let's go right back to the beginning, hey? What is the story of Marcus Fehlberg, mate? Start with the grandparents.
The grandparents, wow. Well, first, just want to say thanks for having me, mate. Any time spent with you is just gold and so worthwhile, and just love it, and really thankful for this opportunity to have this chat and see where we go. So, grandparents. It's funny you should want to ask that question. I saw this thing, I don't know, not too long ago, where I think you're like, as your mum comes out of your grandma's womb, she's already carrying your egg. So you got these three generations in one, which I think is really, really cool and really special. So, yeah, my grandparents on my mum's side. Look, I should preface this by saying all of them have passed away now, unfortunately, and probably, at quite a young age for me. Definitely, my grandma on my mum's side, she passed when I was probably 3 years old, so I didn't really get to know her. But from all reports, those that did know her, she was an amazing lady. So I would have loved to have known her. My grandfather was quite an intelligent man. He was an inventor and created a insect repellent called Rid, and created a massive business around that, which made him a lot of money. He's no longer in the family, unfortunately, but yeah, he was actually an interesting character in himself. I wouldn't say he was the nicest man that's ever walked the face of the earth. I think there's a lot of history, a lot of trauma on both sides of my family, and he was a big part of that as well. So quite narcissistic. He was quite brutal at times. So as a kid, you don't really get to see a lot of that sort of stuff, or don't pay attention to that sort of stuff. But yeah, he's no longer with us. So I think that in some ways is probably a good thing. My dad's side, both of my grandparents on my dad's side passed away probably when I was in my early 20s, not too far apart, maybe a year or two. I think they both suffered dementia, and it took them out quite quickly, the both of them. But they were great people too. Also, there was some trauma on that side of the family. I don't know if I want to really get into that today yet.
No.
Well, maybe we could. I don't know.
We'll leave that for version two.
We'll see where the road takes us. I think I wasn't expected to start with the grandparents, so I wasn't really prepped for this. But
it's great, mate.
It is great. It is great. So my grandma on my dad's side, she our family has this hereditary eye disease called optic atrophy. So if you have it, your optic nerve slowly dies and you go blind over the course of your life. And it's really strange. I think there's only 2 families in the world that have this disease, or at least in Australia. I think that's the story. And the weird thing is it can only get passed direct. So my dad didn't have it. So I haven't got it. None of my siblings have it. None of our kids will have it. Which I guess probably means that they die out at some stage.
Wow.
But yeah, my grandma certainly had it, and so they had 4 kids, and 2 of those have it. And so it's quite fascinating because it's impacted members of our family in different ways as well. So I always, like, my dad can't eat apple pie, right? my grandma used to cook. She was a great cook. She used to chop up the apples to make apple pie, but she would leave like bits of the core in there because she couldn't see properly. And so my dad would eat this apple pie, and he referred to them as fingernails, right? Like they had the texture of a fingernail. So he just like, it's forever ruined cooked apple for him. He can never eat it again.
Gone.
I've recently just moved to the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, and my cousin lives here. He has the disease, and he's traveled the world. He lived in Brazil for quite a while, met his wife over there, and they've had 3 boys together. They've recently come back here, which is like awesome. We've not, I guess, had a chance to connect really as adults until now. So it's been really cool, like hanging out with him on the weekends and stuff like that, and his family and everything. We both got new puppies as well, so they're like running around with each other. And he just fascinates me. Like he literally, it's never let it stop him or slow him down. He's a qualified chef. He's an amazing cook. He's run like $1 million businesses, bakeries and stuff like that. He started a bakery over in Brazil, based on the model of Sonoma here in Sydney. So yeah, he's just a go-getter, you know. He's never let it affect him, and he's got 3 boys, and one of those has got it. One at the moment doesn't, or is not diagnosed with it, so they're hopeful that he won't have it. And then his middle boy, actually, when they moved back to Australia, they thought it was this disease, but he ended up having a brain tumor. And so they found out that it was the brain tumor causing the blindness, and it's crushed his optic nerves, and so he's completely blind at the moment. But I find him fascinating also, because he'd be maybe 6, and he just like he walks around, no aids or guides or anything like that. Just you know, he knows what he wants. He's a funny little character, and jumps on the trampoline, goes swimming, dives down. Like he just feels his way around the world, and he's taken skateboard lessons like on a ramp.
Really?
Like the kid's incredible, right? Can't see a thing. But I think he's just blessed to have a dad that's like lived with that challenge his whole life, and so just understands. And so they just, I don't know, they just treat him like one of the gang, which he is. And you know, he just is living like out loud and loving life at the moment, which is really cool to see. So that's a bit of a detour from my grandparents, but yeah, that was on my dad's side. My dad's brother had 7 brothers or 6 brothers, I can't remember. So there's lots of Fehlbergs all around the country, and we're all related. People ask me all the time, "Oh, do you know so and so?" I'm like, sorry, but we'll be related somehow.
Just tell me how you know them first, and then I'll tell you whether I'm related. So yeah, look, I'm all for segues. This theme of sight that I've never heard before. I'm looking forward to getting to know more about you and this story. But that's quite amazing that you mentioned, you know, the blindness that has run through the family and the rarity of it. And my experience of you, Marcus, is that you are one that sees incredible things and differently. So have you thought about this theme of sight and seeing and what runs through? What comes up when you think about that for yourself?
Oh, man, that's a great question and great segue. I love it.
It's the go, man. We'll play. Let's bounce around.
So I was going to actually start talking about insects today. So that sounds weird, and it'll make sense. It'll make sense in a little while. But yesterday I was sat down on my front deck here, overlooking my beautiful front garden and front lawn, and I was drinking an enjoyable cup of coffee and just thinking about this chat and what we might get up to today. And I ended up watching this dragonfly that was buzzing around the front lawn, and he was. I didn't know what he was doing, but he just looked like he was having a great time, like just hovering above the grass, and you know how quick they dart around. And then I saw another like dragonfly fly in, and all of a sudden they were chasing each other and took off. And I was like, oh, that was interesting. I wonder if they're going to go, you know, partner up or mate or something like that. Anyway, he came buzzing back by himself, and I figured oh, hang on, he's chased that other bloke out of here, right? Like he's like, no, this is my turf.
Mm.
And then I saw this butterfly and I was watching that and it sort of flew into the scene and same thing happened. This dragonfly shooed him away, like buzzed him out of there and came back and he's hovering above the grass and darting around and having a great time. And then two dragonflies came, same thing. He chased them off, and I was like, "Man, this is like dragonfly turf wars." Like I'm watching gladiators right now, and it just got me reflecting on this this dragonfly, and I was just thinking he's living in the present, like he's having his hero moment. I don't know why he was so protective of the front lawn or what was going on. I don't know much about bugs, but it was just really fascinating to watch, and I kind of had this insight that perhaps like if people looked at my life from the outside, they might wonder the same thing and just go, what is this guy doing? Like there's nothing, particularly over the last few years, there's nothing about my life that kind of makes sense in the normal way society lives, particularly at my age. And I've read this amazing story, speaking of butterflies, this amazing story the other day about butterflies, caterpillars and butterflies, right? So did you know that when a caterpillar turns into a butterfly, like it goes into the chrysalis, I think is what it's called. When he's in there, he turns to complete mush, like to just goo. And then from there, the butterfly forms and he cracks open the cocoon and spreads his wing and he's a beautiful butterfly, right? What I found out was like when he's a caterpillar, the wings are inside him ready to come out, right? So when when he turns into this goo, like he's already part butterfly, right? And then someone did this experiment with caterpillars where I think that they were hitting them with some kind of stimulus. Let's just say it was like a particular noise. I don't know exactly the details. It doesn't really matter. But as they were hitting them with this stimulus, they were shocking them with an electric shock at the same time. And then the caterpillars went into the cocoon and the chrysalis and turned into goo and then emerged as a butterfly. And then the experimenters hit them with the same stimulus, the noise, and the butterflies started reacting like they were getting an electric shock. So they were all of a sudden like jumping around and buzzing like they were getting shocked, even though they weren't. And so somehow, like when the caterpillar turns into a cocoon and into the chrysalis and he turns into this goo, there's still memory of his past self there, right? He's still a caterpillar. There's a brain in there somewhere, right? He emerges as a butterfly with his butterfly wings and still has the memories of being a caterpillar, which I think is quite fascinating. And to me, that like speaks of the hero's journey, which is something I'm quite fascinated by, and I think something that I'm well in the midst of at the moment. And yeah, for anyone that's interested or wants to know something about the hero's journey, it was a term coined by a guy called Joseph Campbell, who looked at all the different religions in the world and the what do you call the stories, the past
narratives and whatnot.
Like the fables and things like that. And he found that they all had this same pathway through them all, and he labeled it the hero's journey. And actually, if you watch any movie, pretty much, like if it's written half decently, it's the same journey for all of the main characters, right? They're on their hero journey, and so they step outside of the norm. They get this call to adventure. They step outside of the norm. They meet a mentor or helper who guides them and teaches them, and then they end up in the abyss. And then from there, it's almost like a death, right? And then from there, they learn the lesson, I guess, level up, and then they come back home and return with teachings and wisdom to share with everybody else. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of the hero's journey. And if you want to know more, there's a great film on YouTube called Finding Joe. I think it's about an hour or so, but well worth a watch. And that's just a great description from people like Deepak Chopra and all these famous people that are talking about the hero's journey and their hero's journey. And I guess, for me, my journey really started when I felt like there was more to life that I wanted to see, and I couldn't see it. I felt like there was more. Well, I've talked to you about this before. I called it the veil, right? There was more I could see. There was more beyond the veil that I couldn't see. And I felt like it was right there. And I just wanted to reach out and touch it and grab hold of it. But I didn't know what it was, what form it took. So, just started praying a prayer about being able to see beyond the veil. And I had no idea what that would entail and where my life would go. And, that was probably, I'm not great with timelines, but let's call it 2 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. And where I am now from that point, like there is no way I would have believed you if you had to describe the journey I've been on since then. It's been tough at times. It's been rough. It's been humbling. It's been a journey of unlearning and a journey of learning, and it's been completely worthwhile. I've absolutely loved it. I'm still on it. I can't wait to see where we go. So I know you were asking about the light. I guess that's a long roundabout way of me describing how I sort of came to be able to look at things differently and see things differently. I became curious. I guess I took the courage to kind of look at all of my beliefs and challenge them and go, just because I believe this is true, is this the truth? I wanted to understand the real truth, not my subjective truth and how I saw the world. And I still that still lights me up. That's still something that I'm always wanting to learn more about. So it's kept me fueled and motivated to continue on this journey. And so it's been fascinating. But the things that I've learned and the things that I'm still learning and unlearning has just really changed me completely as a person from the inside out. And I guess ultimately, like, that process has really been about discovering who I am. And I don't mean who I think I am, or who my ego may define me as, because I think that's quite a normal process for society and our culture, the way that we traditionally live our lives. We're defined by our family and our job and our recreation and the car we drive and the possessions we own and things like that. So if you strip all of that away, then who are you? Like, really, who are you? Why are you here? And for me, that's been like the biggest question that I want to answer is, what is my purpose here and why am I here? So, man, I've been rambling. Does that answer your question?
It's awesome, man. I'm on the edge of my seat. There's a quote, and I'll butcher it, but it talks about how we have to appreciate the cracks, right? And you said you've gone through some hardships and you've unlearned a whole bunch of beliefs, but the saying is that treasure the cracks, because that's how the light gets in. And as you're talking, and you mentioned you see things differently now, right? And the outside world trying to tell you who you should be or what makes you valuable, and dropping that. I can just imagine you poking through whatever that thing is in front of you and a bit of light coming through, and I honor you and I see you just going, what the heck is this light behind the darkness that the cracks opening up? I love it, mate. I love it. It's you see differently and it is beautiful, and I'm in. So do you have an answer for that question? Do you even need to answer that question? Who am I?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I on the one hand want to say yes, I know the answer to that, but I think that that's too limiting. I think that the adventure of life is the constant journey of discovering new aspects of yourself, new adventures to go on. I think that's the beauty with the hero's journey. For example, you can complete a hero's journey and then you can start again. Or even in my experience, I've found that potentially over the last few years, let's say I'm on the hero's journey as a whole over those 2 years, but in the middle of that, in the midst of that, there's been these little hero's journeys that I've completed, right? So, I think it's a never-ending process. And I think, you know, you and I have had some great discussions around this sort of thing where it is this never-ending process, and that's the joy of the journey. And I don't want it to stop, you know, like I don't think that we would ever get to a point where you go, oh, I've got it all sussed. I know who I am. I know what my purpose here is. I know, you know, I've completed my hero's journey. My life's complete. I've done everything, you know, like I don't think it's about that. And that would be boring, right? Like,
yeah, preach it.
as they, I was just gonna say, as they say, you know, it's not the destination, it's the journey that counts.
It is, right? And when you hear that growing up, you don't believe it, do you? Because they keep telling you, oh, you know, you better study hard and finish school, and then you better go and get a job and better get married and better have kids, and then you better do this and better plan for it. And there's this default future that almost prizes the end of each of these little mini journeys as being more important than how you got there. But you know, a lot of the spiritual wise humans would talk about that dark night of the soul. There's 1,000 ways of describing what you've gone through, but as I listen to you, I just love that if we were scared of the dark and the trials that we think come with that, we're going to do everything to avoid it. But if you just sink into it and go, okay, this is a cycle, you know, this is a 2 steps forward, 1 step back life, and you don't have to try and take 10 forward by just strain. The downsides give as much gold as the upsides, and
if not more, I would say,
if not more. There's something in there, right? And you've got, I love it. Like I listen to you, Marcus, and you've got I guess what they talk about, the wisdom of the children in you, which is just discovery, right? Like I love that you're not settling and you are going. There is no end point, right? No. To what there is to discover in this beautiful deep breath that you're taking that you'll call your life. And that's why every time I talk to you, I am blessed, right? I'm blessed to hear where you're up to. And I did not know that butterflies go through the dark night of the soul and have to let go of everything that they thought they were in order to fly. Damn if the lessons haven't already been laid out in front of us.
Oh, isn't it a great analogy? Like it's so, nature's just incredible when you take the time to stop and look. So so to answer your question where I'm currently at, like I've gone through I guess different modalities that are all about self-discovery, and you and I shared the journey of the Enneagram, which again was a fascinating almost hero's journey process for me, right? Because I went into it thinking I was a type 9 and did the test, showed that I was a type 2. And, you know, then we did this workshop and I learned all about what it was to be a type 2, and it was like blowing my mind, right? And, man, like I so appreciate that process with you, and it just taught me more about myself. And it's really about those unconscious drivers of behavior within ourselves that sit in the shadow that, you know, you may not be aware of. For me, that was another like light bulb moment, you know, like it was shining a light on something that sits in my shadow that was like, actually, no, my key unconscious drivers are based around a type 2, where it's, you know, the considerate helper and trying to people please. So that was a fascinating journey for me. And there's been a whole bunch of other modalities that I've looked into, really, that I just love that stuff because it helps me understand more about myself. And I think, you know, I have this belief now that the best way to change the world is to change yourself. And so the best way to change yourself, I think, is to understand yourself better than you ever have before. And this is, again, why I was referring to what I was referring to before when I said, well, if you strip away all of the stuff that culturally or socially our identity is built around, then who are you? Like, if you don't have money, if you don't have relationships, you know, key relationships in your life, you strip everything away, like, who are you? And I think the beauty of it is that when you're on this journey, you get to be that hero of your own story, right? Like that's one of the key messages I would say from today's recording is that, you know, I think everybody needs to maybe step outside of the humdrum, the norm, and take the hero's journey and write your own story. Like this is, you know, we're here for the adventure. And
Mm.
I know you can relate to that as a 7.
Oh yeah, I hear you, mate. And in what you're sharing, I hear you saying and calling whoever ends up listening to this or watching this, that when you do strip all that stuff away, what is left? Pure, loving, creative opportunity and potential to do something that matters to you, right? And if you ever get too caught up on, I've now made it, bam, hit the nuke button, turn to mush like the butterfly, go into the cocoon for a while, as dark as it might be, and start again.
Yeah,
And you'll start to trust what I see in you, which is every time you want, you can create who you want to be.
that's it.
And we hear it growing up, and it's so easy to dismiss it because it sounds like some cliche. But when you really feel it, and I see it in you, things change, right? And you are creating some amazing human experience in life. Where it goes next, who knows? But it's powerful, man.
Yeah, look, there's so many facets of that we could dig into today too. But I think,
Mm,
again, like I said, I know it sounds like a cliche, but if you think you've got it figured out or you've reached the destination, then you're missing the point. It's about that journey. And
mm,
I think it can be quite daunting. There can be fear related
mm,
reasons why people maybe don't take the first step.
mm,
And sometimes you're just forced into it. I think, ultimately we're all here for a reason. We have a soul contract. And I think that the universe is going to keep pushing you down that path until you take that first step. So,
mm,
yeah, you can choose to do it willingly, or one day your life might get flipped upside down because it's time to take the journey, and it's not something to be afraid of. I think you and I are probably great examples of that. We've both been at that point and had our lives flipped upside down, and we're here still talking about it. We're still breathing. We're still loving life. Like if anything,
mm,
the adventure's been well worth the trials.
mm,
Um, so there's another modality that I looked into called My Human Design. Have I talked to you about this one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard about it. Mm,
So I was doing some or body mapping, I think some people call it as well.
mm,
The idea being that when you're born, the stars are in a particular alignment for the exact time and place where you're born, and they imprint, I guess, a, a let's call it a life journey on you, really, or it's a life
mm,
purpose. Um, and probably at the start of learning about all this sort of stuff, I was a little bit skeptical, but
mm,
I was just reflecting on mine yesterday and thinking it's bloody accurate, like it. So I'm a manifesting generator, which I think there's 4 main types.
mm,
Basically, a manifesting generator is here to experience life, to do things different, to try new things, and more specifically, I'm what they call a 3-5, the great life experimenter, right?
mm, mm,
And I was reflecting on it because even from way back, like I've always been a person that gets bored with the same thing quite easily. Like I'm always, when it came to sports and, I loved what they would call extreme sports, as a kid, like skateboarding and water skiing
mm,
and wakeboarding and riding my BMX and stuff like that. So, but I would quite easily get bored of one thing and be ready to start learning the new thing, right?
mm,
And there would be things in my life that would capture my attention and hold my focus for a long time. And then some things I was like, yeah, cool, I've done that, learned it, like on to the next thing.
mm,
So this has been me from like right from the beginning, and yet my human design shows that that's my life path, that I'm the great
mm,
life experimenter, that I'm here to
mm,
experience new things, and from that develop the wisdom that it brings. So some things may
mm,
work, some things don't, but for me, that's the adventure. That's the joy of life, is just trying new things. And, I've just gone and done the same thing again by uplifting my life and moving to the Sunshine Coast, and
mm,
living on a cattle farm, growing my own fruit, buying meat direct from the owner of the farm, and
mm.
just loving a new experience. Like it's a completely
Yeah.
different way from what I'm used to living, being a city boy, living most of my life in Sydney. So,
Mm,
um, and I think that I've also done what they call a soul contract reading.
What is that? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so again, based on the same sort of thing, this time it's got some numerology involved around your name and date of birth and things like that. And again, same sort of idea in that it's, I guess, a way to describe your life path, or a way to put some form around what your life purpose is and why you're here. And so what I learned from this process for me is that I'm actually here to share that wisdom that I learn with people, to help them on their path. So, all this experimenting is actually giving me the experience and the wisdom to share with others. So it's almost like my soul contract is to be a teacher. And, I wouldn't hesitate to suggest that yours is kind of similar on that front as well, right? So that's what I love doing. Like, I just love connecting with people. I know you're the same, like just having great conversations, connecting with people. Maybe planting a seed if it leads to something great. If it doesn't, hey, you made a new friend, or it's an old friend that you're creating a deeper connection with. And that for me just lights me up.
Yeah, you can see it, right? I know there'll be people listening to it, but you can see it in your eyes, right? It's quite remarkable. So you mentioned up front, Marcus, the like a lot of people are scared, right, to let go of the idea of who you thought or who they think they are, and the lifestyle that they're living. And it seems like you feel this deep conviction inside you to go and try and change and experiment, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. What do you say to the people who are scared and experiencing fear, as someone yourself who has gone through so much change that you probably would have said no way to 20 years ago if we said, here's what you're going to be doing? What do you say to people who are scared to change or to try something different?
Yeah, great question. Look, for me, the proof is in the pudding when it comes to that, because I'd be the first person to admit that I've lived a lot of my life stuck out of fear, and not willing to step outside the comfort zone. And as a result of that, the universe has kicked my butt. There's been things that have happened that you couldn't plan for. Like, you can't. You would, like, if I described to you like how I ended up getting moved out of my apartment in Sydney, a year and a half ago, you wouldn't believe me, the stuff that happened just all at the one time for that situation to happen. So and look, there's probably people listening that are maybe in that position where the universe has kicked their butt. Maybe their partner's left them, or they've had a tragedy in the family, or something's come along to upheave your life in some way. And look, first of all, my heart goes out to those people. It can be tough, and I can't always. I haven't experienced everything, so I can't necessarily always relate to those situations. But all I know is that even from the deepest, darkest places, there can be some amazing changes and some amazing light that shines through. And so to keep walking, keep taking those steps forward, because look, there's a reason for everything, I believe, and things will change. You will see in hindsight the reason for it. But to those that are maybe in an okay position in their comfort zone, and maybe fearful of taking that first step on the call to adventure, my advice would be just do it. Like, don't be afraid to throw your life up in the air and see where the pieces land. Part of that process for me was exactly that kind of mentality, particularly when it came to moving out of my place. I went couch surfing for longer than I probably planned to. I think it was a good 7 or 8 months, traveling up and down the coast, and just being in new places and meeting new people and doing things different. But I did, I could have easily just gone and got another apartment, done the norm. But I kind of had this, after everything I've been through, I kind of had this mentality of, wanting to go on the adventure, whatever it may look like. And that's part of the reason why I'm now up here too. So I think, yeah, like maybe just take that first step. You know, I was reading the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, some Chinese philosophy and from ancient times. And that famous saying that you brought up is from that book, right? Like a journey of 1,000 steps starts with the first step.
Journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Thank you. Yeah, I knew I butchered that. I'm always good at doing that.
But you got it. You mentioned it, right? The first step. So tell me about that. Instead of getting caught up, right, in the further out we go, right, the further out into this imagined future that we want to desperately know what every step's going to look like, the scarier and the harder it is, right? So take me back to that. You're reading this powerful book, and taking the first step is the central theme. Tell me about that.
So I guess I'd probably want to preface it with that mentality that I had at the time was born out of let's call it a growing faith. You know, I grew up with a religious background in the church, and as I said, my journey started with kind of challenging everything that I held to be true and trying to understand the actual truth, not my subjective truth. And that has transformed my faith journey. And part of that was like understanding fractals too, which we can get into or not, doesn't matter for the time being. But
you're cool, man. What would you like to share? We could do another one on fractals if it's important.
Maybe we should down the track. But yeah, look, my faith shifted from something that was, I guess, up here to something that was in here, where it was just an internal knowing that God or spirit or the universe just had my back through everything that I've been through. I still am walking out the other side. I'm still breathing. I'm still having some amazing experiences that I would never have expected to have. And I think taking that first step is really about letting go of knowing what the journey may look like and what at the end of that 1,000-mile journey, where you're going to be, and just trusting. So if you're, stepping out into the unknown, then that's when life can really take hold of you and take you to places you couldn't even imagine. And like I said at the very beginning, it hasn't necessarily always been an easy journey, but man, it's been worthwhile. And man, it's taught me a lot. And man, I've grown so much through it. And that growth is priceless. And, the fact that for whatever reason, I'm blessed enough to be able to share that with others and help them on their journey is just like icing on the cake. Like that, like I said, that lights me up. And that, I have this belief that we're all here for a purpose, right? We all are created for a reason. And the most fulfilling life that any of us can have is living out that purpose. So, and I guarantee you, it's not that matrix based, like paying the mortgage and putting food on the table and, putting petrol in your car. Like those things are important. Yes. But my experience has really taught me that if you take the pressure off and trying to meet those needs and just allow life to be changed in a positive way, then like those things kind of take care of themselves. And that's when the adventure really begins. So I forgot what your question was now, but it's that kind of answer.
Doesn't matter, man. Like when I listen to you, there's this saying that you and I probably heard growing up, which is I walk by faith and not by what I see. And, it's funny that sight keeps coming up in this conversation, but you, as far as I can tell, are walking by faith. And in doing so, you are seeing what you need to see in this life. And it's incredible. Much easier to say than to, I don't even want to say do, but you are just being faith, as far as I can tell. And amazing things seem to be happening in your life. And I love that you have just shared there is something once you have this beautiful piece of life or love or trust or understanding, whatever you want to call it, that you want to give it to others. You want to share it, right? It's like you found some delicious fruit that no one's ever tasted. Guys, you got to come try this, right? Yeah, it's
That's a
something
great
else.
analogy. Yeah. Like going back to
Mm,
the fear thing, right? Like
mm,
I was always that person that worried and stressed over making a decision, and the bigger the decision,
mm,
the harder it was for me
mm,
to make a decision out of fear of making the wrong decision.
mm,
And that for me is completely flipped now, based on this faith journey, is that I'm where I'm supposed to be.
mm,
Whatever decision I make is the decision I'm supposed to make. You know,
mm,
wherever it takes me in life, that's part of the journey, that's part of the learning process, and that's that's where the blessings come from, right? So
yeah.
um yeah, I think, you know, if we all set focus on living out our created purpose rather than
Mm,
just surviving,
mm,
man, the world would be a beautiful and different place, wouldn't it?
mm. Indeed.
Having said that, I just want to preface it by like, I've suffered some pretty serious trauma in my life, and it can be hard to step outside of that. And even at the moment, I'm doing a breathwork somatic healing course to deal with some
Mm,
childhood trauma that, you know, I had a repressed memory of childhood sexual abuse from an adult male in the front yard of my house.
mm,
I only uncovered that not even a year ago, midway through last year. I didn't know it was there. Never, you know, I had trouble believing that it was true when it came up, but it
mm,
was uh, surrounded by a bunch of memories that I know did happen.
mm,
And so the more I've integrated that and thought about it and visited the house up here in Queensland where it happened, the
mm,
more convinced I've become that it actually happened, and how it formed a lot of that fear-based activity in my life, and being able to trying to
mm,
control my environment and my you know, my relationships,
mm,
and to their own detriment, you know, like that. It's just trying to control everything, at least in my experience, just is a backwards way to live your life. Like it's
mm,
impossible to do, and you just wear
mm,
yourself out trying to do that. So
mm,
yeah, it's I know there's people out there that are living in survival mode, and it can be hard to break out of that. So you know, my heart goes out to those people, and honestly, like I just um I don't know, just want to wrap my arms around them, give them a big hug, tell
mm,
them everything's going to be okay, because it really will be. I
mm,
truly believe that.
mm. The courage that I I guess you were given when you decided to step into that shadow work um, is nothing short of a miracle. So what thank you for sharing that as well. You know, thank you for your honesty and your openness. I know you, people listening may not, but I know that, man, you have a way of getting into the rawest moments of the human experience that most people are scared to step into, that is life-giving on the other end. So what do you say? You know, you mentioned two things. A lot of human beings feeling like they've got a big decision to make. All right. And you used to live in fear of making the right decision or the one with the least negative consequences, whatever it may be. What do you say to someone that is feeling the intensity of having to make a big decision right now, as someone who doesn't feel that way all the time anymore?
Well, man, I think there's a few different ways you could probably answer that. Uh, in my experience, again, and I'm not purporting to like, I'm no professional. I'm not saying this is the way out. But at least in my experience, when it comes to some of those decisions, I've always known the truth within myself. It's when your
Mm,
head gets involved that it gets in the way. So I'm particularly thinking of my broken relationship with my ex-fiance. You know, like at the time, we probably pushed through a number of challenging situations when the relationship was quite obviously already dead. Um, and you know, for me personally, I knew deep down that it was up, and that it was time to step away and move on. But in my head, I'd made this commitment, and part of that, I guess, was probably trying to force a certain direction in life as well. So one, I would say, someone's trying to make a really difficult decision and is struggling with fear. That deep down, potentially, if you really listen to that inner voice, you know the answer. And it may be that it's not the one that you logically want to take. It's not the step that you logically want to take. Take it anyway, because you know what's best for you. Your body knows what's best for you. And if you make that decision, it's going to be rough. It's going to be tough for a while, but things will work out. The universe has your back. And there's a reason for it. This is part of the hero's journey, I suppose, outside of that, like if you look at something like the Tao Te Ching that I've just finished reading, Taoism would almost contend that you don't need to make the decision, that if you just let life flow, that decision will be made for you. And whatever that may be, it'll be the right decision. And again, potentially that tough decision is actually your call to adventure in the hero's journey. It's your time to take that first step in the journey and see where you end up. You and I both experienced that, and are now sitting here recording a podcast and having a great time out the other side. And like, who would have thought?
You would have thought. I mean, you nailed it, right? Who would have thought? Thought does get in the way. You just shared a very personal moment about memory and the past, and there's that saying that the past is a great place to learn from and a horrible place to live in, right? When we're always going back over and over again. I love that we got as far as your grandparents, and then we kind of moved on to what matters now, because this is it, right? What we're doing, this is it. It's powerful. But you mentioned what you think, and I think it was Michael Neal, one of the guys that I started to read and listen to when I made the same transition. He talks about the kindness of the design, and those words have just stayed with me. And when you share, Marcus, for people to get out of their heads and what makes logical sense, or what they've been programmed, or all the thoughts that add clutter, and listen to this compass that is always inside them. If you can get past this personal, fragile, insecure thinking and listen to something bigger than you that is also you, you will be taken care of. There's a kindness to the design. It doesn't mean you sit there and do nothing. Sometimes that's the right thing to do. Sometimes, not even right thing, but sometimes inaction is a good decision. Other times, if you listen, you'll know what to do, right? You'll know to get in the car and head up north and have a new experience. So it's all the same stuff. We try and use these words from different places, but the way your experience matters, mate. What you're sharing matters, because it's just another proof point in this remarkable thing inside each of us, if we can just be quiet enough to listen to it, eh?
Yeah, I think I touched on it before with this idea of the soul contract. So as a concept, it would infer that before incarnating here on this earth, that we chose our life path. We signed up for it, right? So let's say, I'm the Great Life Experimenter. I'm here to experience things and share that wisdom, right? Like, I signed up for that beforehand. So if you were to take that as truth, then there's going to be things that happen in your life that are happening to lead you down that path, right? And it can take those deep, dark moments to bring those light bulb moments, to bring those aha moments, to bring out that part of you in your soul that is here to share with the world. And so, I've had a lot of things happened to me in my life, and I don't regret them because it's led me here today. And it's part of that hero's journey too, and that there's going to be those moments of trial, those moments of difficulty, that abyss, that death, right? That is all by design to bring out the gold in you. And so, I've got a deal. I don't know if I want to share this. I've got a family friend who their grandchild just got hit by a car last night and is not looking like they're going to make it. And it's quite a difficult situation. A 15-year-old boy, it was hit in a 100-kilometer-hour zone. What is that guy signed up for? I don't know the answer to that. Tragedies happen in life, and it can leave you asking the big question of why. And we may not ever know the answer to that, to what comes next after this life. I don't know, but there's some very real and grounding moments that happen in life that can just give people perspective on what's important and what's not. And I just actually, like I said, I didn't plan on sharing that today, but it's just something that's on my mind at the moment, because it's quite a difficult situation that I know people. I'm not necessarily that close with them, but I've known them for a very long time, and to see a tragedy like that happen just tears at your insides.
It does, right? Yeah. Love hurts sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I think that's a good segue in that, for me, part of the coming to terms with fear really has been also a coming to terms with the fear of death. I think, I don't even know which wise sage said it, but there's a saying about, sometimes people are so afraid of death that they forget to live. And again, I probably butchered that, but the general premise is the same, right? Like, I think if my journey's led me to understand that death is not what it's made out to be, that it's potentially just a new beginning. And, it's separation from our loved ones, but I don't believe that's the end. I think we're eternal souls. I think we always have been and always will be. And so the mere fact that we get to have this human experience is a blessing in itself. And it just means that, on the other side of it, I guess our souls are more connected than they were before we came into this world. So I think that's a beautiful thing. And I was going to say I'm not afraid of death, and maybe there's still this innate fear that is there. I don't know that. I wouldn't say I'm 100% not afraid to die, but becoming less and less afraid of it because of my belief that there's going to be more after this, and that's something that I find exciting, not something to be scared of. So. Yeah,
I love it, mate. There's again, I'm not sure who said it. I heard it on a podcast, but this one guy that was terminal was consoling his family, and I'll just never forget him saying, "Look, I really hope you guys one day understand that death doesn't happen to me; it's happening for me." And just listening to you today, mate, you've died 1,000 deaths, not of your body. I'm grateful that, that thing is still kicking around with the soul inside it that I get to talk to. But the death of, ego from time to time, and then it comes back in other forms, or the death of the idea of what you're meant to do, or who you're meant to be, or what you're meant to believe, There are many examples given to us, and that caterpillar butterfly example. Caterpillar and the butterfly. Yeah. I mean, that's a beautiful example. It's like almost everything can get stripped away. And at the core of it, there's still something incredibly beautiful and powerful on to the next version. right, whatever it is. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so there can, I guess, when your identity is built up in who you think you are, then there can be some fear around what would that look like
Mm,
if you stripped all of that away. And
mm,
I think therein lies the beauty that you can recreate yourself at any moment. There is no reason why you have to continue believing the same things about yourself that you've always believed. For me, for example, like I've always had this sense of not being good enough that has been centered around shame from things like the abuse that I suffered as a child,
mm,
right? So
mm,
I don't have to continue living that story though. I can step outside of that and go, actually, you know what? I am good enough, like living a life where people on the outside are looking in going, what the is he doing?
mm,
Like that's okay. I'm
mm,
here to live life differently, like our great friend Tyler, uh, when I left working with you, well, working with him because you'd already left at that stage, right?
mm,
That was a compliment that he paid me. He said, Marcus, what I love about you is that you don't live your life to society norms, that you do things
mm,
differently and that you're
mm,
okay with that. And,
mm,
I probably hadn't done much uh, exploring of my human design at that stage.
mm,
And, like it really stuck with me because, now looking back, I'm like, man, for him to highlight that as a reason for him, a reason why he looks up to me and a reason that, a thing that he loves about me, like it hit home that there's a place for every person here.
mm,
Everybody's got their own journey and there's a reason for it. You're here for a purpose.
mm,
And so don't be afraid to write your own story. I think
mm,
you love the Matrix, right? And
mm,
if you look at the hero's journey, like Neo's the taking the hero's journey, like let's focus on the first Matrix, right? Like
mm,
he's stepping outside the Matrix, he's going outside of the known world into something completely foreign and different and uncomfortable.
mm,
He doesn't know what or where he is. But he's taken that first step in the call to adventure, and
mm,
look where it leads him. Like he
mm,
doesn't even believe for quite some time that he is the hero of the story.
mm,
But he goes through that death in the abyss, and then he realizes
mm,
that he is the chosen one, and he
mm,
comes back with this wisdom and experience to change the world.
mm,
Right? He changed himself, and he changed the world.
mm,
Um, so yeah, like that's another great analogy of this journey, right? So
mm,
um, I forget where I was going with this, but it's just a good example that
mm,
if you do decide to, oh, that's what I was going to say. Yes, cool, we're
mm.
back on track. Good. So, sorry, my mind goes in monkey
Go,
brain.
mate.
You call it, right?
I'm,
Like
I'm with you, mate.
I
Monkey
must,
mind.
yeah, I must have some of that as well. I was born in the year of the monkey. There you
Mm,
go. So and this comes back to the what I wanted to talk about today, and the
mm,
whole concept of before I go and what I would share with others, and particularly my core group of family and friends.
mm,
Um, everybody's been so much a part of that journey for me that I'm so grateful and just love everybody for the contribution they've made to my own journey. Like I am on my hero's journey and writing my own story, but it's not just been me. There's
mm,
so many people that have had an influence on that process for me. There's so many people that have played a massive part. And it's the same for Neo, right? Like he can't get to where he needs to get without the support and love of those people in his circle, right? Um, and each of those people have their own hero's journey to take, and they have their own
mm,
story to make and their own story to tell.
mm,
And that's the beauty of life and why we're here, right? That our journeys intersect, right? But everybody's on their own beautiful journey and for their own reason, right? That's why you have like Hollywood blockbusters and they get all these spin-off stories, right? Because
mm,
they can write another hero's journey about another character in that first trilogy or whatever it may be, you know, if I'm looking at Star Wars or something like that, right? So it's the same. We're all on our own journey, but the beauty of life is that we are here for that connection and for that intertwining of our stories together, because man, it's a beautiful thing, and man, it's fun, right? So yeah, like that's what I would pass on to, outside of the core message, I guess, of take that journey, and yeah, just embrace it, you know, embrace those people in your life. They're here to teach us, they're here to guide us, they're here to love us, they're here to experience with us, they're here to go on the adventure with us. And you know, I'm so grateful and thankful to everybody that has been a part of that journey. Like if I look back in hindsight at all the things that have happened in my life, they've led to this point now. They've led to this change, they've led to this adventure, and there's going to be many more after this. And I just can't wait to share that with everybody that I know and all the people I'm yet to meet.
Man, I love your gratitude for the people who have walked with you, mate. And I love that you love you. Right. Not the ideas, not the artist formerly known as Marcus, but you love you, the real you. And man, that is something I'm really grateful for, mate. I'm grateful to bear witness to that. And yeah, thank you, man.
Oh no, thank you. You've been part of that journey too, brother. Like I think from the very first moment that we met, like I just had an inkling that you were different than most people that had come across, that I'd come across in my life. And you know, I think back then neither of us had started this journey that we're both on now, and who was to know what was to come? But you know, there was just something that, it was like a light in you that I could see, and I just really appreciated that back then, and I appreciate it and love it even more now. And yeah, like just love any time that we get to spend together and have these great conversations, whether people are listening or not.
It doesn't matter. Like, this is it. We create it, and mate, the light in you is damn bright, and I love seeing it. All I can say is thank you, man. This is it, right? So, is there anything else? You know, you had a chat to me before we started about your nephew and a few things that were on your heart and you know in your soul to kind of share. If this is it, is there anything else that you want to say before we go, mate?
Yes, there is. But before I get to that, I had another session with this somatic healing breathwork coach, I guess is the best term for it. Yesterday, and he was talking about parenting his newborn child, and doing it from a secure relationship point of view rather than an insecure attachment style. And he finished up by saying, look, ultimately though, like despite our best efforts, his son is going to experience everything in life that he needs to experience to get him on his soul journey, good or bad. There's nothing that he can do as his dad to stop that from happening. So, you know, it's like that whole analogy of holding loosely rather than holding tightly. Just, you know, creating that space of love for his son, even though he knows at some stage that something's going to upend his life for the purpose of him taking that journey. So again, going back to what I said before, like as a concept, if you did sign up for what you are experiencing in your life, you know, be okay with that and take that journey. Like, I don't know, for me, it's been about accepting who I am. And I guess, you know, it means a lot to me to have you say that you can see that I love myself, because it's been quite a journey to get to that point. You know, there's been a lot of stuff that I've been through and been, you know, at the point of suicidal at times too, and feeling like I'm not good enough. So it's a work in progress. And, you know, I'm making strides, and I think that's part of my journey. But what would I say to my nephew or like those close to me? There's three, maybe three kind of highlights to sum it all up. One is don't be afraid to upend your life, because that's when the adventure begins. It can be daunting and fearful, but the universe has your back, and there is beauty that is going to come from that you can't even imagine. And I guess the second point would be part of that first point, in that just take that first step. Like you'll get that call to adventure. And if you watch that Finding Joe YouTube video, they actually say that it's almost like you can't say no to this call to adventure. Like if you do, you're going to do the cycle again and come back, and it's going to ask you to go on that adventure again, and it'll keep happening. You'll repeat patterns of behavior. Relationships will be the same until you get to that point of going, actually, you know what, I'm going to do things different. I'm going to go on this adventure. Don't be afraid. Just take that first step. And I guess the third thing would be, don't be afraid of your shadow. Like, dive in. For me, like, understanding what's in my shadow has led to the most gold, has led to the most change, has led to the most beautiful outcomes. And it's something that I was probably afraid of for quite some time, you know. And I think it can take courage to do that, you know, to step outside of your norm and take a step into yourself and trying to understand yourself better. You know, there's behaviors that we all have that are in our blind spot that we don't know are there. And, you know, to understand those, to understand what triggers those, allows you to go on that healing journey and change who you are for the better. So, yeah, I think for me, that's been a big part of my journey too. And I'm sure there's still plenty of stuff in that shadow that I've yet to uncover. But, you know, it's like that whole analogy of the crack you were talking about. When it splits open and you shine light, then you can see what's in there. So, and until you do that, you don't know what's in there. But by bringing light to your shadow, it gives you a greater and deeper understanding of yourself. And that brings with it growth. It brings maturity. It brings blessings. And look, we're all here to grow and change. You know, there's no end point. You're not supposed to, I should be careful what I say, but look, in my opinion, you're not supposed to live the way that society says we're supposed to live, where you go to school, you go to college, you get married, you have kids, you retire, travel around in a caravan for a few years before you kick the bucket. Like, if you want to live that life, great, go for it. But for me, that's not for me. You know, like, I think there's much more to life, and there's so much depth to explore within yourself. So I encourage people to do that, because that will lead to so much more fulfillment, so much more, so many more blessings. And like, ultimately, like, you know, there's always been a part of me that's wanted to change the world. And it's only been recently on this journey that I've learned that actually, like, the most that any of us can do to change the world is by doing that work and changing yourself. Because yeah, like I said, if we all lived for our sole purpose rather than living the way that society tells us we're supposed to live, the world would be a completely different and much more beautiful place. Not that it's not beautiful, but like, man, I have this dream of returning to the Garden of Eden, or creating a new Garden of Eden, right? Like, where we all just live in peace and joy and so fulfilled. And yeah, there's just no more pain and suffering anymore. Like, that's the ultimate dream, right? And I believe that we're part of that process of making that happen.
Yeah. And reminding each person, as you've done so lovingly, mate, that it starts with them, right? That can be found within them, and then you're not going to be able to do anything but want to share it. Here we are, right? And you're connecting, right? You're a miracle, man, as far as I can tell. A walking miracle. That we are. Yeah. There you go. Well,
So yeah, like get out there, write your story. Hey, like go on the adventure. Go on the adventure. I've if you look at my Instagram profile, like I think I've described myself as a experimenter and an adventurer and a contrarian,
mm,
a free thinker, and an anarchist. And you know that I think is a good description for where I'm at in my life at the moment. It may change,
mm,
but yeah, I'm just loving this journey I'm on and loving sharing it with you, brother. And you
mm.
know, if people are out there listening and they get something out of this, then that's awesome. And hey, don't be afraid to give me a shout out on socials, or you know, Lyndon's got my details. Love to hear from you. Like I'm always open to connecting with people and sharing my story and hearing their story.
I love it. Thank you so much, mate. There's you know, there's that very primitive understanding I have of the phrase namaste. And for me, it's just the light in me honors the light in you. And you've got so much in you. It's really quite remarkable. So thank you for your
Thanks,
presence,
brother.
mate.
Oh,
It's
thank
beautiful.
you. I'm very
All
grateful.
right. Thanks so much for listening and sharing this space with me. I really, really hope this has served you well and it continues to do so for years to come. I love helping others, so if you would like to experience the power of creating together, please reach out to me. I'm here to help. And if you want to be on the podcast and leave a legacy, check out the contact details on my website, lyndenrochford.com, or you can find me on Facebook. I'd love to hear your story before I go. Wishing you so much love from the inside out. I'll see you soon.